You can struggle all you want, but my pizzeria is going to Kyle and Karen. If you don't like it, get a divorce. My husband yelled that loudly. Following him, his brother Kyle also chimed in arrogantly. I'm family too, right? Give me the pizzeria. Kyle's wife, Karen, also insulted me. That amazing pizzeria is wasted on you. Get out already. A fierce anger welled up inside me. I didn't care what happened to these people. I decided to give them a thorough reckoning. First, I would correct their misunderstandings. I smirked, wondering what their faces would look like when they learned the truth. My name is Nancy. I'm 35 years old and I run a pizzeria. I have many regular customers, and thankfully, the business is thriving. This shop was originally started by my grandparents. My parents passed away from illness when they were young, so my grandparents raised me. As I helped out at the pizzeria, I began to aspire to become a pizza chef and take over the business. After graduating from culinary school, I started working at the pizzeria immediately. I learned how to make pizza from my grandfather and customer service from my grandmother. Thanks to their guidance, I became a skilled chef and conducted myself properly. For a while, the three of us ran the pizzeria together, but when I was 23, a man came to the pizzeria. His name was Sam. He was 5 years older than me. He was a pizza chef, but the pizzeria he used to work at had closed, and he was looking for a new job. My grandparents were elderly and considering retirement. They wanted another employee besides me, so we hired him. His skills were exceptional, and he quickly became an asset. He taught me many things, and before I knew it, we had grown close and got married when I was 25. My grandparents trusted him, saying he was a sincere and earnest man. Our married life was smooth, and even after my grandparents retired, we supported each other and kept the pizzeria running. However, when I was 31, my grandmother passed away from illness. The following year, my grandfather also passed away, as if following her. After that, my husband's attitude began to change. When I was in the kitchen, he often looked displeased and said, "Why don't you handle the customer service? I want to focus more on perfecting the pizza." So, I want to be in the kitchen as much as possible, pushing me out. I thought it was because of his strong passion for pizza, so I often took care of customer service. But his true feelings lay elsewhere. About 6 months later, I overheard him on the phone with someone, saying, "Nancy's a woman, right? It annoys me that she's a pizza chef." I was very sad. It was shocking to know my beloved husband felt that way. Pizza is a traditional dish, and there's a strong trend of women being excluded. As a result, there are few female pizza chefs. However, this notion has been diminishing, and more pizzerias are accepting female chefs. Moreover, I provide pizza that satisfies our customers. I wish he wouldn't dislike me just because I'm a woman. After he hung up the phone, he finally noticed me and hurriedly tried to cover up. I was just stressed out. I won't ever say that again, I promise. Please forgive me, okay? Since he seemed genuinely remorseful, I decided to forgive him. But he started causing other problems as well. One day, I noticed that $2,000 from our joint savings had been withdrawn. When I confronted my husband, he said, "My brother lost his job and needs support. He's family, so we have no choice." But to be honest, I hated it. That's because his brother, Kyle, is a problematic person. He originally aimed to become a chef, but quit soon after because he couldn't handle the tough training. Since then, he's been hopping from one job to another. I've met him a few times, and each time he asked for money, leaving a strong impression of being irresponsible. His wife, Karen, also couldn't hold down a steady job. Yet, she constantly antagonized me, saying things like, "You must be exhausted working all the time. I'm enjoying my free life as a housewife." Did we really need to provide thousands of dollars in support to such people? They're adults, healthy, and should be able to manage on their own, I thought. While the pizzeria was profitable, our savings were dwindling. Initially, when I cautioned him about over-supporting them, he would show remorse and say, "I'm sorry." But later, he would say things like, "You're the one managing the savings and household budget. If you were better at it, we'd be fine," offering no real solution. Our relationship worsened, and I started worrying about our future savings, leading me to seriously consider our situation. Divorce crossed my mind briefly, but I dismissed the idea. My husband was skilled as a chef, and losing him would impact the pizzeria. Also, I clung to the unfounded hope that he would return to his old, responsible self. I later realized how naive that hope was. A few years passed since my grandparents' deaths, leading to the present. An unbearable incident finally occurred. On a day off, while I was hanging laundry at home, the intercom rang. When I answered, Kyle and Karen were standing there. "Hey, there. Starting today, we get to eat pizza every day." So happy. I couldn't make sense of what they were saying. When I turned to my husband for clarification, he nonchalantly said, "From today, they're going to be living with us for a while." I was even more confused. Upon learning more, I found out that they were in dire financial straits and couldn't even pay the rent on their apartment. My husband had offered, without consulting me, "You can stay at our place for a while." Moreover, since neither of them were working, we would also be covering their living expenses. I told him, "You can't make such decisions without consulting me." But he just said, "They're family, so it's fine," and didn't listen, forcing the cohabitation on me. My stress levels skyrocketed. On top of that, my husband would bring them to the pizzeria and feed them high-end pizzas for free. They acted like it was the most natural thing in the world, noisily devouring the pizza. To make matters worse, my husband even said in front of other customers, "You are on the house," causing regular customers to become suspicious. A regular named Mike frowned and cautioned my husband. "Sam, it's not good to keep giving family free meals. It will hurt the business." He showed a semblance of remorse, saying, "I'm sorry." Mike was a longtime customer and someone I had been close to since childhood. He was like a grandfather figure, always offering support. He would say, "Let me know if you need help." However, my husband didn't listen to his warning. He never complained to Kyle and always smiled at Karen. Watching this, a suspicion began to grow in my mind. I hoped I was wrong, but it was later confirmed. As my stress reached its limit, a major incident occurred. It happened on a day off. Actually, we've decided to give the pizzeria to my brother and his wife. It's always been his dream to be a chef, and I think it's a good idea. I felt like I was going to faint. Owning a pizzeria is a huge responsibility. I didn't think they could manage the business, and I didn't want to hand over the store I inherited from my grandparents to such people. I told them this clearly. This made them furious. My husband yelled at the top of his lungs. "That pizzeria is mine. I can do whatever I want with it. No matter how much you struggle, the store belongs to Kyle and Karen. If you don't like it, get a divorce." Kyle also spoke arrogantly, "I'm family too, right? Just give me the pizzeria." Karen also insulted me. "That pizzeria is wasted on you. Just get out already." A fierce anger welled up inside me. I didn't care what happened to these people anymore. I decided to give them a thorough reckoning. First, I would correct their misconceptions. I smirked, wondering what their faces would look like when they learned the truth. "I don't know what you are misunderstanding, but the pizzeria was inherited by me from my grandparents. It's in my name. So Sam cannot transfer it to you." When I explained this, my husband looked shocked. "But I'm your husband. I should have the right to do what I want with the pizzeria. Inheritance goes to blood relatives. Since we don't have children, my inheritance is mine alone." Finally understanding the inheritance laws, he was dumbfounded. I was also almost speechless at his lack of common sense. Maybe my husband, being so focused on pizza, didn't understand how the world worked. I had often felt this way throughout our marriage. Then Kyle got noisy. "Hey, you should have explained that beforehand." I finally raised my voice in anger. "What? You're the ones who made assumptions and acted on them. You barged in here, ate for free without working, and now you're complaining." Annoyingly, he argued further. "But I don't care about the name. We can run the pizzeria ourselves. You're not needed, so get out." I decided to really leave. If I stayed here any longer, I'd lose control in my anger. I packed only the essentials and left with a "goodbye." After leaving, I stayed in a cheap business hotel for a while. There, I started planning my next steps. I didn't feel like trying to reconcile with my husband. I finally realized that the kind husband I knew was gone. Whether that was his true nature or something had twisted his personality, I didn't know. But I suddenly felt foolish for having trusted such a terrible man. I was determined to bring them to justice. I wanted Kyle and Karen out of the house too. How could I drive them out? After much thought, I made several phone calls and began my plan for revenge. I also went out a bit, and within a week, I was ready to return home. When they saw me, my husband looked triumphant. He smirked as he looked at me. "Oh, so you've finally come back to apologize. And only after a week? You really have no spine." He laughed loudly. Suppressing my anger, I presented them with several photos. At that moment, they were all stunned, but my husband and Karen turned pale. Meanwhile, Kyle looked confused and asked, "What are these photos?" "These are photos showing Sam and Karen's affair," I stated coldly. The photos showed my husband and Karen walking arm in arm, looking happy. Other photos captured the two looking very affectionate. Kyle finally grasped the situation and turned red with anger. "Hey, what's going on? How dare you betray me by having an affair?" His anger was intense. However, my husband didn't apologize, he became defiant. "Shut up. It's not my fault I fell for her. You were always out and about, so I ended up spending time with her." Karen also started making pathetic excuses. "It's your fault for not working. Compared to you, Sam is a respectable chef. Who wouldn't choose him?" She didn't work either, and Sam was far from respectable, having an affair. I was beyond angry, I was just exasperated. They started a low-level argument, and it looked like it would get out of hand, so I intervened to calm them down. I was irritated that I had to deal with this. Once my husband calmed down a bit, he glared at me. "How did you get these photos? Were you following us?" "No. I hired a detective to gather evidence of the affair. That's how I got these photos. I had visited a detective agency." He whined, "Hiring a detective is sneaky, but the sneaky one was the cheating husband." Not that he would understand that. Kyle asked a question. "How did you suspect he was cheating?" "Hiring a detective means you had a hunch, right?" I smirked. "We're married, so I can tell." It was obvious from the way he was overly friendly with Karen. The smiles he gave her were completely different from those he gave me or the customers. My husband was speechless. He probably thought he would never get caught. In his distress, he started rambling, admitting that he had put on an act in front of my grandparents and that he married me mainly to have his own pizzeria, not out of much love. Despite the deep wound this caused, I gave him a cold stare. "I loved you so much, but you betrayed me. You did so many terrible things. Do you have any idea how much I suffered because of you? Can you even imagine?" I said this harshly, and my husband finally fell silent. He looked regretful, but I had no intention of forgiving him. They were also silent, perhaps feeling awkward. With the room finally quiet, I continued. "I'm going to demand alimony from Sam and Karen, so be prepared." This statement made Karen loud again. "Wait a minute. I don't have any money. How can you demand alimony from someone like me?" I cut her off. "Just get a job and earn it. You can pay in installments. It's unacceptable not to make amends after hurting someone." She was so intimidated by my outburst that she simply replied, "Okay," and fell silent again. I pulled out a completed divorce form and made my husband fill in the necessary details. "Once I submit this to the city hall, I'll be rid of this troublesome man." The affair issue was settled for now. But there were still things I needed to make them do. I asked them, "Do you realize you didn't just cause trouble for me?" They looked puzzled. Since they clearly didn't understand, I had to explain. "You gave terrible service to the customers, didn't you? Over the past week, I've been checking in with our regulars, and they all complained. The main complaints from regulars included making lots of mistakes without apologizing and loudly bad-mouthing customers in staff-only areas. One customer even reported that Kyle tried to pocket their change. When I told them about these complaints, their faces turned pale. Since you've caused so much trouble for our important customers, you'll need to apologize to them. I'm going to call the regulars now. And you'll apologize to each of them, I said. I took out my phone and started calling our regulars one by one. I briefly explained the situation, then had my husband, Kyle, and Karen apologize in that order. We repeated this many times. Every regular was very angry with the three of them, and the apologies took longer than expected. For Mike, whose address I knew, I sent them to apologize in person. When he saw their faces, he raised his voice. You guys were terrible. How could you stand in front of people with such an attitude? No matter how delicious the food is, I will never eat what you make. Then, he turned to me with a gentle smile. Nancy, cut ties with them. Even without Sam, you'll find better chefs. Yes, I'm going to divorce him. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. In fact, before executing this plan, I had sought advice from Mike. His help was invaluable, and I was very grateful. After leaving Mike's house, I made sure to drive the point home to them. By the way, I told the regulars about your affair and other misdeeds. You might want to be chefs, but our regulars won't come to your restaurant. And if they tell others, no one else will either. Even if they didn't open a restaurant, knowing that many people were aware of their failures would be a significant blow. I told them to pack their things and leave immediately, and I quickly kicked them out. They ended up having a loud argument on the street. And the police were called to take them away. They were troublesome to the end. Although they didn't end up with criminal records, they separated and lived apart. Kyle and Karen also divorced. I submitted the divorce papers to the city hall and cleanly cut ties with my husband. Kyle still couldn't hold a steady job and lived a poor life. He had a lot of debt and was constantly running from debt collectors. As promised, I demanded alimony from Sam and Karen. Karen found a job for now. However, having been unemployed for so long, her salary was much lower than others her age. My husband also moved to a distant state where he knew no one and found a new job. But rumors spread from somewhere, and all of them lived with their past misdeeds exposed, making their lives difficult. Especially Sam and Karen, who had to keep working to pay the alimony. Their lives must be much harder than they imagined. They can suffer as much as they want. Even after Sam left, the shop's business remained steady. Regulars, knowing the situation, frequently came to support the shop. Although I had fewer opportunities to be in the kitchen because of my husband, I had been secretly practicing, so my skills hadn't diminished. With enjoyable days back, I was leading a fulfilling life. We even hired a new employee. She's a young woman who just graduated from culinary school. She still has a lot to learn, but she shows promise. Her attitude towards customers is good, and she has a good reputation with our regulars. Since we're both women, we can talk more freely, and she often comes to me with her concerns. I think we've built a good relationship. I'm even thinking that it might be nice for her to take over the shop in the future. But I still intend to keep working hard. While cherishing the pizzeria I inherited from my grandparents, I want to continue growing as a pizza chef and as a person.